Imagine being on a crowded train, and instead of everybody scrolling on their phone, imagine if everybody was talking out loud to their device. Think about how loud that train car would be and how awkward it would feel for everybody around you to hear exactly what it is you're doing on your phone. That's what I always think about when I hear about new technology being pitched is how weird would this be if people actually used it? And not just using it, but in public, because technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has to fit into our lives as we live them. And I think a lot of this new technology, it really does show you the vision of the inventor. And it shows you that the tech industry really does presume a level of isolation in the future. Because for most of these new devices and the new technology they're pitching to us, they really only make sense if you're alone. I mean, we're already pretty isolated, but in the future, they're anticipating that we're even going to be further isolated, completely alone, because that is the only time it feels okay to use voice commands with your phone. That's the only time you wouldn't feel weird wearing a Apple Vision Pro or AR glasses on your face, is if nobody else could see you. Because if anyone else is even close to you in the vicinity, you would feel ridiculous. And people don't like feeling ridiculous. What's so weird too is that, Instagram, Facebook, social media, it has introduced a new dynamic in public space where nobody wants to be recorded in somebody's stupid viral video. So in public, we all kind of freeze up a little bit. We're aware of the panopticon, the constant surveillance state that we're all kind of in due to camera phones. People, at clubs, they don't really dance as much as they used to because nobody wants to be recorded and they want to be made fun of on the internet. These same companies are trying to sell you a pair of glasses that are basically always recording. A pair of glasses that look stupid, that people who wear them, you're aware that you're wearing a computer on your face and you feel ridiculous. But they are still presuming that you're going to want to be in public being recorded. So they introduced that first behavior, and then now they're introducing a second behavior that contradicts the first, which is why this stuff's never going to work. Not because it's not new, and not because it's not functional technology, but because nobody actually wants this. And technology is only good as the user. It's only as good as it fits into our lives. And it's not going to fit. That really gets to the difference between good technology and bad technology. Good technology reflects the user. Bad technology reflects the inventor. And as inequality grows, and as the elites become more elite, and the rest of us get, shut down into oblivion, that gap is only growing, which is why we end up with so much useless technology. I mean, these AR glasses, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses that are currently being pushed, they're glasses you wear on your face, and it's a display that can show different things. Stuff can pop up. And, it can analyze, you can use AI to analyze your surroundings and kind of tell you about things. This is not a particularly new concept. Google tried to do this a while ago. People have been talking about wearable AR glasses for a long time. But the reason why it never took off before is that nobody could really think about a good reason for wearing them. Nobody could think of a use case, a real improvement that glasses provide over just holding your phone like we already do. But if you listen to enough pitches, if you hear enough people talk about AR, enough tech guys, you will hear one use case come up again and again. And that is, what if you could look at a building and learn information about that building? Wouldn't that be cool? And the answer is kinda. I guess. The reason why that's always the use case that gets pushed is that this technology is being made by and made for a guy who just moved to San Francisco to work in the tech business. That is the only kind of person who is constantly confronted with buildings that they don't understand. This is a guy who just moved from somewhere to this new big city, and he is bewildered by the fact that there are old buildings all around him, and he wants to look around and see pop-ups. Meanwhile, everybody else either doesn't care about buildings, or if we're curious, we can just look it up on our phone. The phone that we already carry around everywhere, and that already does this. But for these tech guys, they got to think about what's going to be a new device, a new thing we can sell. And they're the only ones who wouldn't feel dumb wearing glasses all the time, just so they could look at a building. Same thing too with you hear about AI agents. Someday in the future, everybody's going to have an AI agent who handles all of your administrative work. Once again, this is technology. This is a, solution in search of a problem. But if you listen to these tech guys talk about this long enough, you will hear another use case that always pops up. They'll always say, hey, what if you had an AI agent who could help you make dinner reservations? It's always dinner reservations. And once again, this reflects a certain lifestyle. This reflects the affluence of a San Francisco tech worker, a guy who has enough money to frequently eat at restaurants that require reservations, and a guy who is socially awkward to the point where they feel burdened by making a simple phone call to a restaurant and leaving your own name. That's too much for them. They'd rather spend years and $1 billion of, compute energy on making an app that will make that reservation for them. Meanwhile, all regular people talk about these days is the fact that Chipotle costs too much. So the tech guy is spending billions of dollars to make a robot that tells you the price of lunch. Meanwhile, people can't afford lunch. I think the real test for technology, the real way to understand about whether this is actually useful is, would you feel dumb pitching this idea to poor people? Imagine you went to a slum in Mumbai and you knocked on somebody's, zinc roof, and you leaned your head in and you said, hey, don't you guys hate making dinner reservations? Boy, do I have a device for you. And what do you think they're going to say to that? Because you're probably going to feel pretty silly. And that's how you should feel, because this idea is absurd and nobody wants this. The other reason too is that why none of this stuff is actually going to get adopted is that, like I said, technology does not exist in a vacuum. It has to be used. It has to fit into our lives. And our daily lives are already filled with technology. So when you pitch a new technology, you're not going into blank space. There's no white space in the day. It's already filled with different kinds of screens and different devices that we use for different things. So if you're going to pitch something, it has to be not just a little bit better. It has to be way better. What you're asking for is a whole new learned behavior. And people are not going for that. I mean, you think about the leap from flip phones to smartphones. Very logical. A smartphone is a superior version of a flip phone. We can do cameras, we can do maps, video, the screen. You think about going from wired headphones to AirPods. This is a logical extension. This is not a new behavior that has to be learned. They go in your ears. Wearing glasses on your face all day long is a huge ask. And all you're doing is, the only thing you're really replacing is sometimes looking down at your phone. And that's why it's not going to work. The question to ask about AR glasses, about these Meta Ray-Ban glasses, is not, would you spend $800 on this device? The question is, would you use this if it were free? If there were no charge and someone just handed you these glasses, would you adopt this behavior? Not would you take them. Obviously, we'll all take something for free. But would you put this on your face all day long, every day? I think the answer is no. Not only would I not do that for free, even if you paid me, I wouldn't do it because it would feel like work. That's the thing too, is that these Meta Ray-Ban glasses, the idea is that eventually this is going to replace your phone. You won't need a phone anymore because you'll be wearing your phone. But they don't have iMessage. Think about that. The whole reason for this stupid technology, the reason why Meta is putting all this money into it, is because they missed the boat on making phones. They tried to make a Facebook phone back in the day, but it didn't take. So now every time somebody does something on Instagram or Facebook, Apple is getting paid off of that. So Mark Zuckerberg is trying to play catch up, and he's trying to do it in the stupidest way possible, which is a pair of glasses that tell you what a building is. And it's never going to work. And here's the real problem. This is why this stuff is so personally offensive, why this should be offensive to all of us. It's not just that, vaporware. It's not just about disappointment. It is the fact that our entire economy is being geared towards these projects that don't actually address real problems, and that we can see as failures already. We can see where things are going to break down. But because of the way, market capitalism is set up, this is where all of the money, all of the resources are going. This is why we're building gigantic data centers all over the country that are driving up electricity prices, is so that these tech guys can pursue their stupid ideas that nobody actually wants. And, talent follows money. So all of our resources and all of our smartest people are being invested in something that we don't actually want. And when everything blows up, it's not going to happen in isolation. It is going to affect everybody. The stock market is already starting to look a little shaky. And when the bubble bursts, it's not going to be those tech guys who feel the pain. It's going to be everybody, because this stuff is all tied together now. And that's really the problem with setting up the economy in this way around big tech. Because technology, the tech industry, is centered around a certain kind of goal. and that goal does not line up with regular people. Like I'm saying, that as inequality grows, the vision of the tech industry and the vision of the regular person is only growing. That gap is only growing, which is why we're ending up with all of this useless technology. But when you think about how technology advances, you think about human accomplishment and advancement throughout history. There's two kinds of technology. There are binary, and then there's iterative. Iterative technology is something that improves over time. Binary technology is something that it either works or it doesn't. I mean, you think if you set the goal to solve world hunger, but you only get halfway there, you didn't accomplish your goal, but you still fed a lot of people. If you set a goal to build 100,000 homes, but you only build 50,000 homes, that is still 50,000 homes where people can live indoors. If you try to go to Mars, but you only get halfway there, you die in space. That is the difference between binary and iterative, is that certain kinds of goals, they lend themselves to constant effort and to making things a little bit better, feeding a few more people, housing a few more people. But that's not what the tech business is centered around. The tech business is centered around moonshots. This is the Peter Thiel 0 to 1 thing. If you're the only one who gets there, then you get all of the rewards, and nobody else can take part in it. But that's not what you get from feeding people. That's not what you get from solving problems like housing. That is what you get from doing AR glasses. That is what you get from AGI. But the question we need to ask ourselves when we see new technology being proposed, it is not, does this work? It's not, is this an interesting concept? The question we need to ask ourselves is, what if we don't get all the way there? What happens if we only make partial progress? What if AI never gets good enough to free us from labor? But what if it gets just good enough to destabilize half the economy? What if social media never connects the entire world, but it connects us just enough to hate each other? Because that's where we're at right now. That's the gap that we're in. That's the valley of halfway there. And that is a dangerous place to be, because at that point, all you're going off of is the promise of somebody who has broken a lot of promises before. I always think about this as like poker. You talk about when you're playing poker, bad cards are not bad cards. I mean, you get, 2-9 offsuited. You fold. That was just, you wait for the next hand. Wait for something better to come along. You get bad cards, you know they're bad, and you flop. You fold. The bad cards to get are pocket queens. Because you get pocket queens, that is the third best hand you can get dealt. You feel pretty good about yourself. That's when you go all in. And of course, somebody else has pocket kings, and you lose. So maybe you made, on a technical poker level, you made the right decision. But that's how gamblers lose. That's how you go bust. Because when you're 90% there, that's when you feel the most confident, because you think you only have a little bit more to go. But this is the saying, 90% is halfway there. When you're 90% solved in a problem, that last 10% is not like the first 10%. That last 10%, you are in unknown unknowns. You might never get there. Most problems never get solved in that way. There's always going to be a last 10% that's going to get you. And you don't fail on your own. When you fail, you take the rest of us down with you because we're all betting on this one thing to work. I mean, this isn't just a criticism of, big business and, market capitalism. I mean, we've always had, titans of industry, Carnegie, Rockefeller, those kind of guys. But at least those guys were doing something that people wanted. It was probably not a good idea to center the economy around oil, but we needed oil at the time. Somebody was controlling all the railroads. All right, that's a little tough, but we did need railroads. We could actually use some more railroads. But that's not what they're building. They're building glasses that tell you what a building is. It's like, no, we don't want glasses. We want cheap burrito.